Hello and welcome to Man's Model Moments Midweek Model Meet. Greetings, everybody, out to this midweek get together. I can see Mario, Gary, David. Let's see, who else do we have? Kercheval, John. David saying hello to everybody. David Barber. Good evening, all. And all of those of you who are prowling without being in the chat. John Alec, welcome. I just went and got myself a drink before the thing started. I've got a mark on the glass, but I'm joining the Peter Oxley group of modelers drinking tonight. So drinking wine this evening. This one is Oyster Bay. It's all right. I wouldn't say it's great, but it's quite refreshing. So, good evening, Graham, and good evening, Phil. So I don't have any particular topics this evening because I'm not sure if anybody is going to be joining the chat today. So what I will do is I'll show you a couple of projects that I've got at the moment. And maybe that will lead to some discussion if we do get, I don't know if John Alec can come on or Fenris can come on later on. But the topic, I think, loosely would be commissions, because that's one of the things I'm doing. So let me actually just switch over now that I can do this cool cam switching stuff. And here's the BenQ cam, which I'll have to do a video review on sometime soon. And that's upside down. Why is that upside down? Right, there we go. Sort of does this auto sensing thing, because I've got it quite low angled. But it actually does show quite nicely and quite in focus the modeling stuff, which is quite good. I do like it. So this, if anybody recognizes it, is the Tamiya 1/12 scale Lotus 49, specifically the one that Graham Hill drove, and very successfully. He was basically unstoppable when he was driving this in Formula One back in the day, before my day, I must say. And this is a commission for a good customer of mine who's currently in Barcelona this week on business. So I can show it to you without any danger of him seeing it in advance. But as you can see, I haven't really followed the main instructions, because the main instructions will make it difficult to paint this main body. So this is the color of the kit. I haven't painted the actual shell here. And it just features some 1970s stuff. So one of which is, as you can see from the extensive rework, Andrew didn't ask me to do any of this. I've just done it as a sort of piece of pride, I guess. But there's a massive seam line, one that you can see here. And also, this is obviously the battery compartment, complete with, big sink marks you can see here. There was a tab, I think, at the front. So I basically filled this, sanded it all smooth. This is down to 800 grit, just with sprue goo. There's a lot of sprue goo. I think I did 3 applications just to get this. Not that you will ever see it, but the rack and pinion steering actually works. You can see there. That's me turning the steering wheel. So again, Andrew said it doesn't matter if that doesn't work, but I'll make it work anyway. Suspension works at the moment. Still got to have the main things on. So last night I put this decal on the radiator. So this bay is painted from sort of here forward, is painted. Obviously, you've got the chromed pieces from the kit. I mean, the kit itself is a bit of a pig, I have to say. So this has just been painted in basic black at the moment. Still got the gear lever to put in here. Obviously, the main instrument panel, the steering wheel, and Graham Hill himself, he fits in there and will actually occupy most of this, and then the shell comes on top. So it's quite difficult because you can't get the figure in once the top is on. So painting this is going to be interesting because there's quite a gap and I don't want it to look horrible. So I've kind of done it so that I could create all of this, because the actual way that you're supposed to put this on has the chrome pieces in here and stuff, which can make this almost impossible to paint. This at the moment isn't glued on at all, so this is just friction fit at the moment. So the fit is actually pretty good in most places. I mean, this is slightly pushed over, but that's because of these vinyl pipes. Once you actually put the nose cone on, it pushes it back in place. It's fine. You can see quite a lot of work here on the back to make this acceptable. You won't see most of it because the engine goes over it, but I didn't want the gaps. This all needs to be sprayed. I think I'm just going to do it the same gunmetal as that. I don't think it's this gloss coat here. I think it was just the gunmetal from the pictures that I can see. Because most of it, of course, is covered by this enormous engine, which has been an interesting build as well. Again, not helped by pre-chromed pieces, especially the worst offenders of these exhaust pipes, which are all pre-chromed, and none of these pieces are chrome. These are all white. The only chrome pieces are these. So that part at the back there isn't chrome, that's white, like these exhausts. But I had to scrape all the chrome off those to spray them, which is a real pain. And the wiring, of course, is the other interesting piece. So you've got these clear pipes which get routed underneath these pieces. So you've got to put these pieces on with these routed, and then they go onto the, I think they're fuel injectors, right? They go onto these pieces by the actual exhausts, or air, sorry, the air intakes. So obviously it comes in, air gets pulled in, fuel injector injects and goes in. So it's obviously a V8 engine. And it's, you know, it's quite nice, but it's taken a lot of work to get it to this. There's a big seam across here that needed cleaning up. I just sprayed it basic aluminium and done a bit of light wash on it because they were kept in pretty good condition. So just to give that impression of shadow in some of those bits. So it hasn't been a labor of love, I can tell you that much. This piece kind of fits on. See these two tabs, it sort of goes up and then clicks in and gets glued on. And obviously you've got all the chrome linkages. Again, the instructions would have you do all of this now. That's not going to happen. So yeah, it's been interesting. The other piece that I've done are the wheels. So they come in this lovely 1970s sort of plastic bit. So again, chrome parts, but actually the spokes on these Lotuses were black. So I had to mask off the center and spray those black. But I think those come out pretty white. I've obviously done the white on the Firestone. So those haven't come out too bad. Black on the back, obviously. So, you know, kind of doing it in these little sub-assemblies that the kit doesn't have you do. And obviously the kit instructions very much of their time. I go back to the main cam. So, yeah, that's a commission that I'm doing for, and I've done a commission before for Andrew for his friend, which is a Seafire, which I will put a video out at some point. Um, and it's an interesting exercise, let's say, because you are doing a model to a particular standard. So the other commission I've got, I think I mentioned it previously, is the 1/48 scale monogram B17, done in a particular scheme, Old Faithful, and that is obviously for the local museum. So they don't want to, do all of the interior and stuff. Obviously, I'll paint the interior, but I'm not going to go, hell for leather on that because you won't see it. It'll be in a museum, and I haven't charged them very much. So that's the other thing of it, right? Is how much do you charge? If I charged for my time as I do for consultant, even if I charged half of what I charge as a consultant, it wouldn't be really feasible, you know. Even if I was charging just my telephone kind of commission rate, which is like $80 an hour, there's no way people would pay that. So you're not going to make a massive amount of money doing commissions, but they can be quite, I don't want to say fun, but they certainly get you doing different subjects that you might not otherwise do. So the B17 is not a natural choice. It's not a bomber that I would do, principally because, as I think I've mentioned, let me get my chair up there. As I think I've mentioned in other streams, and apologies if I'm going to offend a lot of my American viewers here, B17 was a bit of a crap bomber. Okay, it wasn't very good. And before I get torrents and torrents of comments and stuff, there's a really good video on YouTube by, I can't remember the YouTube guy's name. I'll try and link it in the recording here of this stream. But I think the title of the video is "The B17 Was Crap." So if you search for that on YouTube, you'll probably find it. And he goes into quite a good analysis, actually a very good analysis of why it wasn't a good bomber. It was super expensive for what it was. And in theory, it could carry a particular bomb load. In practice, it didn't, because it crucified its range. And of course, range is one of the most important things of a heavy bomber. And one of the main reasons it wasn't very good is because it carried so many damn machine guns, which were heavy. Browning machine guns were heavy, with all the thousands of rounds of ammo for them, and the 10 flight crew that you had to make all of this work. So if you're carrying all of that stuff, it wasn't carrying bombs. And of course, the heavier something is, the power plants, you need more fuel to get your range, and that affects speed. So it wasn't fast either. So yeah, it's so B7. The point of all that is, I wouldn't normally B17 isn't something I would be like, oh yeah, I've got to make a B17. Liberator, on the other hand, just to show that I don't have a bias against American bombers, right? Liberator was actually a pretty good bomber. B29 also wasn't a very good bomber, principally because it used to catch fire a lot. And before you think, oh, he's one of these Germanophiles who think all German technology was amazing, the Germans were shockingly bad at building bombers. I mean, and again, that chap does a really good piece on the HE-177 Grief, which is conceptually a fantastic bomber. And I think that's the problem with a lot of like Nazi Germany stuff, Third Reich stuff, is conceptually it was very advanced, very good, very leading edge technologically, but the materials and production, and especially in the war period, Germany just didn't have the resources. It didn't have the capacity to be able to realize, what was on paper. So, and the Grief had some serious design issues, which made it, its engines catch fire, and a lot of them crashed, and a lot of people died. And at the end of the day, it's the brave people, the pilots, that have to try and fly these things that end up paying the price for that. But the Greif, I think, looks nicer. So there is, you get that aesthetic bias coming in. Also, it has more interesting camouflage schemes for me as a modeler. So I would more likely do an HE177 than I would a B17, but the commission has for the B17. And learning about the history of that particular aircraft has been really good. And it pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And I think being pushed outside your comfort zone is actually a really good thing, especially in a creative hobby like modeling, because otherwise it's very tempting to just do the same thing. Just do, and that's also good in for different circumstances. But the amount you can learn, I think, from being put in outside your comfort zone, from the amount you can learn being in your comfort zone, is drastically different. So, building this 1/12 scale engine for a Formula One car has involved a lot of different modeling skills than I would normally use. Chromed parts, I tend to avoid cars anyway. Chromed parts is one of them. And you've got these little plastic tubes to glue onto stuff, which you need super glue for. There's just a lot of different stuff, and it's a different scale. So you need to be more careful about how you do things like weathering on a larger scale. Thing, ironically. Right, let me just have a quick look at the chat because I've been waffling for a bit there. Point here, and it's a really good one that Moss makes every airfix and chill. Unfortunately, I couldn't be at airfix and chill on Monday. Primarily, you'll have realized, I think, because I was doing the April Fool's video on the paper plane that airfix put out. I thought that was a really good tweet and blog post by airfix, and I thought it needed a bit of a follow-up. I thought if they made that effort, I can kind of make that effort. I'm slightly wonky, so there we go. That's a bit better. It's just bothering me. My OCD side is coming in there. So yeah, and I would have joined airfix and chill had my first print worked, but the first print, the paper plane printed, but foolishly, I just went with the orientation that airfix provided the STL. So on the blog post, if you don't know, and going back even before that, if you didn't see airfix's April Fool's blog post, they did we've released a surprise announcement, a 1/3 scale paper plane model, and it was quite funny. But they actually have created an STL for you to print if you actually want to make it, which I thought that's going above and beyond. That's pretty good for an April Fool's. So I felt it kind of needed the same kind of effort putting in. So I immediately downloaded it, printed it out, but I printed the base in the same orientation that the STL is provided in, and I should have reoriented it and supported it properly because it failed. All of the supports printed perfectly in the shape of the shadow stand, but there was no shadow stand on top of it. It was like, oh god. So I had to reprint that. Meanwhile, I created all of the graphics. So the instruction book, I had to do the instructions, which sounds simple because it's a one-stage step, right? But I needed to get the right font, again, for the starter set labeling and everything. I know it was fun to do, but yeah, it really pushed me up because that second print is about a 4.5-hour print. So yeah, that took to about 10:30, I think, the shadow stand finally finished. And I was kind of just waiting for that to do the final photos, which is why you don't see the shadow stand in the actual unboxing piece, because it didn't exist at that time. So that's why I wasn't on airfix and chill on Monday. Which was a shame, actually, because there were a few things that I watched it, obviously, yesterday. I think it was, yesterday. Oops. So I've got a touch sensitive lamp here and I just accidentally knocked it. So yeah, I watched it yesterday and there were quite a few things that I would have quite liked to have put my 2 cents in for, I guess. I think Luke leaving Airfix to join Revell, that could potentially be really good, right? If Revell are going to try and invest and get that research, get the accuracy and everything, I think that's a great thing for the hobby. And I hope Airfix backfill that appropriately. Fingers crossed. Yeah, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff which I would have loved to chip in, but unfortunately, obviously, the time went. So, but anyway, getting back to these weird segues and meandering paths that my brain goes on, because the original spark of that was Airfix and Chill, and that came from Moss has a really good bit on Airfix and Chill where he always says if you've got a question, make sure you put question, preferably in capitals, because then it's easy to pick out on the comments. I don't know if you've ever done a live stream, but it's quite difficult to be actively thinking or talking or engaging with somebody and checking the comments as well, because you don't want to miss those, because you guys have tuned in to be with me here, so I don't want to ignore you. But sometimes it's easy to miss things. So that brings us back to the original question. Why not more choices for F-35? Will Tamiya release an F-35C naval jet in 148 scale to complete their 148 scale of F-35? I think Tamiya are quite savvy, right? Obviously, they came top in the best model company in the world. I don't think it was too surprising in many ways, although I was slightly surprised Airfix beat ICM, if I'm honest. But I think that's because Airfix has such a broad back catalogue, such an established brand. The new stuff that they've done, the marketing is spot on. They've really got that, the box art and the branding and stuff. They've kind of had the time to develop that, whereas ICM are doing well with that. I think they could do a couple of things to improve that. More on that in a minute. But it was close, right? There were only a few points between them, and it'd be interesting to see if next year, if it's the same. So, but in terms of the F-35, so interesting enough, I got a delivery at the shop today, and it included the 1/35th scale F-35A from Meng model. So I got the 48 scale Tamiya A and B in the shop. I've got the Italeri 1/32nd scale. Now I've got the Meng 48th. I've got a whole bunch of 1/72nd ones. I've got the Academy, the Airfix one, obviously, Tamiya, and the Italeri Beast Mode one, at least. I might have some others. So I think Tamiya are quite savvy, and no one has released a C yet, apart from the Orange Hobby one, which is not the best kit, let's say. As you will have seen if you've watched my F-35, the 1/72nd scale F-35 showdown, Meng didn't do well. Not Meng, sorry, Orange Hobby didn't do well on that. So I think they might wait and see how some of the other companies do with an F-35C, what the uptake is. I'm not sure they'll do it. I don't think there's a big enough market for an F-35C, despite the fact that it is the most different looking of the jets from the A and B. The A and B are very similar. Okay, the B has a wider kind of fuselage canopy piece to accommodate the back lift door and stuff. But the F-35C looks more like the A in that respect, but its wings are much different. And obviously they can be folded, so there's more potential there. So maybe. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see on that one. But I think it's doubtful. We'll see if, I can't remember whether it was, I think it was Hobby Boss was it Hobby Boss or Trumpeter? I can't remember now from the catalogue reviews I did a week or so ago. But one of them is planning to release all three, the A, the B, and C, in 1/48 scale. Now, will that happen? I mean, with Zhongshan Yatai, it's a roll of the dice, right? We've been waiting for like 4 or 5 years for some of the kits. Some of them appear without being announced. It's kind of like they publish this aspirational list in their catalogue. It's like, this might happen this year, might not, might happen in the year after, might never happen. Who knows? Which is weird. I don't get, and I think it must be a cultural thing, because I can't think of any other reason for that, really. So I'm actually doing the Graham Hill's helmet as it is in the, I can't remember, I think it's the 1967 Formula One. There's a particular, I don't have the decals here, but there's a particular scheme in the box. This is a little bit high. Okay. There's a particular scheme in the box where, because the Lotus 49, it almost got like a different finish every race. I mean, it's green, obviously British Racing green. Did appear red at one point, but this is one of the green ones. And his and his teammates slightly different. They had the Firestone logo on them sometimes, and then not other times. Gold leaf as well, when tobacco advertising was allowed, of course, back in the 60s. That was on one race. So it changed a lot, and this is one specific one, the one from the Tamiya kit, which is when he won whatever race it was. And that he has a white helmet. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing it as. I'm doing it pretty much. I'm doing it as the box. And there was another question related to that, which must be a bit further down. There we go. Your commission asked the model to be made out of the box as is. Yes. So, and pricing is based on that, right? So when I quote for a commission, I'll always do it as to be made out of the box. If somebody wants extras on top of that, those will get factored in and they will up the price depending on the complexity. And I can either source those, in which case I'll charge those. Obviously, you get charged extra as well as supplying all the stuff. If you want me to supply it, then obviously I'll charge the supply as well. So yeah, I mean, as modelers, I think we don't appreciate how much it costs to make something. If you think about the investment of time to a decent standard, and I think as lay people, a lot of non-modelers wouldn't understand why you're spending or want to spend so much on a reproduction of whatever. And unless you're into that sort of thing, then obviously you do see the value. So it's a difficult one, because obviously you don't want to be tying up tons of your time, your modeling time, which is precious, right? And also, and I'd had this discussion actually with a good friend of mine who was a professional modeler, and he gave it up for a while because he said it just became a chore. And he didn't want his modeling to become a chore, effectively, which I think is a really good, an interesting point to consider if you're ever thinking about commission work, because it does change it, and you're working somebody else's timeline. So I generally have pretty long timelines because, as you've noticed, I'm not a fast modeler. Typically have a lot of different things on the go, a lot of constraints, a lot of draws on my time. So I absolutely don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I would far rather do the Scotty from Star Trek thing, and tell somebody it'll take twice as long as it will, and deliver it in, because then if you're late, right, if it takes you twice as long as you think, you deliver it on time. And if it takes you as long as you think, then you can deliver it on time and have time. And or you can impress them by saying, oh, actually, it's done now, if you want to come and pick it up. And it's like, wow, that's fantastic. I wasn't expecting it for another week. And it's like, yeah, but it's done. So far better to exceed somebody's expectations than to not meet them. Yeah. And that's the same for the build, you know. Hence why I have gone to the trouble of, you know, sanding all of that stuff underneath. Because I wanted to remove that toy-like quality from it. And obviously, I checked with Andrew first. It's just like, you've got no plans to put batteries in it, have you? Obviously, he didn't. But it's always worth asking the question before assuming. Never assume anything. If you assume something, you only have yourself to blame if it goes wrong, right? Because if I'd done that and he said, oh, you've sealed it up, I was going to put batteries in it, that's my bad, right? And really it's for me to put that right, which you don't want to have to do. You really don't want to have to do. Good evening, Craig. Good to see you. If you win the lottery, it will pay me to scratch build a UFO skydiver. Wow. I mean, that, depending on what scale you're looking at, that's a meaty project. So it wouldn't be cheap, I'll tell you that. just bear that in mind, Gary. You'll need the lottery. Just looking down. Question: are you and Moss going for Luke's job? No. Well, I don't know about Moss. I mean, maybe Moss is. I mean, for me, it's not my skill set. I am not which may surprise you, because modeling is, so there's different things, right? So in work, I am very disciplined, and I like working to deadlines. I like schedules. I use Excel a lot, which you'll have seen, of course, in my videos, because I do like using Excel. Very data oriented. That's not how I am in my private life. If you saw the room here, it is chaos, right? It's a good thing it's dark. So there's a difference between work and play, if you like, for me. So work and personal, very different mindset I have in work. So it's almost, I can switch, you know, between the two quite easily. And in work, my skill set, I'm not a detail oriented person. So I'm big picture. So, which is, I guess it comes from being in commercial and being in leadership roles. So I've been in leadership roles since, oh God, well, most of the 21st century, at least 20 years, I'd say I've been in leadership roles. And there you need to have big picture and delegate. And, you know, you have to, it's not that you're not concerned about the detail, it's just that you assign the detail tasks to people, and you make sure that all of that is disciplined and catered for. Yeah. And you draw, it's about drawing all of that detail together to form that big picture and find out where the problems are. This is what I used to do. Find out where the problems are, concentrate on that, and then you can drill down. So it's about zooming out, big picture, you know, making sure everything's going, steadying the ship, zooming into the problems, deconstructing those, fixing them, zooming back out. So a lot of, you know, kind of what they call situational leadership. Doing all the checking, which was a big part of Luke's job, not me. So my consultation work that I do is it's a lot about looking at a business and seeing, you know, they know they've got a problem. And it's like, right, okay, let's work out where the problem is and how to fix it. That's kind of my consultancy stuff in a nutshell. And it's that old adage of, you know, the ship stops going, the engine's broken, nobody can fix it. They call in the guy who was working 30 years on the thing. He comes in, he looks at it for 10 minutes, gets out his hammer, and he hits the engine, and it starts working again, and charges him £10,000. And it's like, well, you only spent 10 minutes. It's like, yeah, but you're not paying me for my time, you're paying me for the result. It's like, it's not about hitting it with a hammer, it's about knowing exactly where to hit, right? And that's kind of what I do in my consultancy business. That is not Luke's job. Right, that is more it's like Dale's it's not really Dale's role, but it's more that, if Dale's role was going on, I'd apply for that. But is Moss applying for it? You'll have to ask Moss. I don't think so. I don't think it would be Moss's bag. I think he'd love to work for airfix. I'd love to work for airfix, but I'm not sure it's his chosen specialized subject either. But hey, who knows? We'll see. John Christmas, doing a tornado in Tiger Meat scheme. Ooh, nice. Instructions call out for Sidewinder missiles, etc. to be put in place. Would this be the case of the display, or should they be left off? That's a good question. I would go and have a look at said, because usually Tiger Meat aircraft are specific aircraft. I would look up the serial number, because it will be on the decals or something, or in the call out for the painting, and have a look at various displays it was at and see, because sometimes they carry like dummy missiles, just because it looks cool. I don't think they're actually carrying active weapons when they go to air shows, unless they're on active duty. So I saw the B2 when it first came to the UK. It was the Royal International Airs 2. Can't remember when it was. Sometime in the 21st century. That's what I can tell you. I think. But it came. It didn't land. It just flew. It did a little fly around, and then it flew back to America. And it was escorted by 2 F-15 Eagles, or they might have been E's for the fuel load, but they might have been C's. But they were in air superiority rollout, so fully kitted out with air-to-air missiles, and those were all live, because those were protecting, at the time, an extremely secret and valuable asset. But when they're flying around normally air shows, they're not carrying active weapons. So I would say do your research and do what you want. If you want it to be accurate to a particular aircraft at a particular air show, do it. There'll be pictures of it, because I can't think of many air shows that aren't pictures of. Even when digital cameras weren't around, people still took pictures, and they get digitized and put online. That's one of the great strengths of the internet and our hobby now, of having that luxury. But otherwise, just do what you think looks best. If you think it wouldn't have sidewinders, don't put them on. If you think it looks better with the sidewinders, or magnetize them, so you can do it both. That's what a lot of war gamers do, right? With like 40k and stuff, they'll magnetize pieces. You can buy, in fact, I sell them at the shop, like magnets and various, like the neodymium, I don't know how to say that. I don't know. The rare earth magnets that are sold, extremely strong. A couple of 3mm. Depends what scale it is, but even a 70-second scale sidewinder should probably take a 3mm or 2mm magnet in it. One at each, not quite at each end, but along the length of it. And same in the pylon. You can paint over them, of course, so they're not as noticeable, and that would hold it in place. So yeah, I would say check your references, see what you want to do, make a decision, and then go with it. Okay, just scrolling through the chat. A lot of people coming in. Hello, Dan. Sound like I have been I3 profiled. I'm not quite sure what I3 profiled is. I'm going to have to check that now, unless you wanted to quickly tell me. Oh, okay. Okay. I haven't ever had an I3 profile. I've had lots of others. So in fact, I've done a lot of personality profiling with my teams in various companies. They're usually pretty helpful, I think, as long as you take them in the spirit in which they're intended, and they're not absolute. They are of a time. Although I've taken a disc test 3 times, spanning almost 30 years, and I've had exactly the same result each time. So I'm pretty extreme as a disc. For those of you who know what disc testers, they're a personality test used a lot in commercial companies. So D, I, S, and C. So D is at least changed sometimes, the letters they use, but D is dominance. I is I think it's ingenuity or innovation. But the I is one that sometimes people use different things for. S is steadfastness, and C is conscientiousness. I'm a 7711. The scale ranges from 1 to 7. So I'm a high I D type. So the good thing about a disc test is it talks about your strengths, which you should know, right? I mean, you intuitively should know your strengths, but if you don't, it kind of spells them out for you. It also highlights your weaknesses, which are, of course, the things you need to work on. And it also talks about how to interact with other personality types, which in a team environment is by far the most important part, right? Because as a high D, high I tend to get impatient with people who aren't up my speed. So if somebody isn't getting it, if I've explained something and they don't get it, I tend to be like, why can't you see what's painfully obvious? I've explained it, you should just get it, because that's kind of how I operate. So I need to slow down with people, make sure that, confirm everything, make sure people get it, reiterate it, make sure people are, traveling at their speed, not my speed. So it is instructive because it helps you develop as a person. And it can be applied in all kinds of situations. So doubtlessly it has helped me during the various years of my commercial development, leadership development, and probably helps in things like making YouTube videos, because you interact with a whole range of people, right? You don't just interact with high D, high I types. And if you did, and if a company was only composed of those, it would be disastrous, right? You need all personality types to form a balanced company. Just like you need all personality types to form a balanced society. You can't have a society made out of 100% engineers, because it would smell really bad, for one thing. That's an old trope, I apologize. And you can't have all, artist types, because nothing would ever get done. It's all about respecting and understanding differences, and working, to your strengths, developing those pieces, So it also talks about things that you tend to overuse. So I tend to overuse, and this was, if it gets it right, if you've answered honestly, and usually this is in a work, you think about it in a work aspect, right? Because they're usually done as a work thing, right? So you answer the questions, which are deliberately difficult, right? And they tend to repeat themselves in different ways. Like, out of these 4 things, which you most or least like, And there are 4 things, and you think, well, I'm most like that. But actually, it's really difficult to choose which of them you're least like sometimes. Or sometimes, it'll be like, well, I'm least like this one, but actually I'm each of these. It's like you have to, they're quite difficult things to do. You can't just, and done. Again, if you're doing them in the spirit, which is intended, and really engaging in it. And when you get your profile at the end and read it, it should just be like somebody has looked into your mind, and you're just like, bloody hell, yeah, that's me, which is good. And sometimes it gets it wrong, for whatever reason, But generally, the times I've seen it used, 99% of the time, they're pretty accurate. And it will give you a list of stuff, highs and lows, as I've already said, but it'll also say things that you tend to overuse. So, or things you should stop doing. One of mine, which I remember to this day, was tends to overuse the end justifies the means. I remember when I first took it, and I was just like, yeah, I do that. That's problematic, is it? Just like other people are like, yeah. It's like, but it gets shit done, right? Yeah, it's like, no, Alex, you can't always do that. Oh dear. Anyway, moving on. Well, yes, viva la vida. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Robert. I hope the shop does well as well. It's been quiet actually recently. So I have had some variable opening hours during the week, usually early week. I think I mentioned this last time, because of all the other bits and bobs that are going on in my life. But weekends, it's been pretty. I mean, Easter weekend was dead. I think holidays like that, families tend to spend them together. It's not the sort of thing you're going out shopping, And for other people, bank holidays, lots of stuff is closed, so you're less likely to go out. So, it's difficult. So I got some stock in, I put it on the website. So got some really interesting things actually. I got a Hobby Boss Swedish infantry fighting vehicle, which looked really cool. I did actually try to order 2 because I wanted to do one myself, and there was only one in stock from the supplier. I'm just like, probably for the best. Another thing to add to the stash I could do without, Let's see. I hope you meant Tiger Meat, MEET, not MEAT. That would be a very odd model to make. Question: do you know when you'll be doing more to the Firefly? Oh, that's a good question. I actually had it the other day. So I could probably schedule a live for that, to be honest. In fact, this Sunday might be a good one for that. Principally because I'll tell you why, and one of the reasons I haven't done anything to it yet. So you'll have seen I used, or I'm going to use, the photo etch seats. Now, a company reached out to me a few weeks ago about a collaboration, at a hobby shop, and do various different stuff from different suppliers. And we had a bit of a discussion. They got loads of things that I would love to review. But I said, because you've got so much, actually, what would make sense is we kind of grouped them. So if I do a review on, say, in the first instance, they got 3 photo etch tools. They got a pair of photo etch bending pliers. They got a photo etch bending tool, and they got a photo etch rolling tool to help roll photo etch, which I've always had an issue with. So I actually waited until I got those. Those came last week. Before I do that, because I thought I could actually use those to do it. So actually Sunday might be a good time to pick that one up. So make a note before I forget. Sunday. There we go. So yeah, look out for that. I'll put a live stream up for that for Sunday. Okay. Use the tool and generally don't change over the time. I'm in the fire service. Yeah. So as I say, I just did a quick look up, and a lot of these tests are used in the same way. So the other one is Myers-Briggs, where you get the ENFP or IN, whatever. So that says whether you're extrovert or introvert, and I find that less useful in general, because extroversion and introversion can vary. They're situational. So yeah, it's like, so I say generally a lot of people use several. The other one that I've used is your, what's it called? The test is called BREAD, right? BREAD. And it basically looks at what your drives are. So I can't remember what so B is belonging, R is recognition, E, can't remember what E is. I think A is acknowledgement, D is development. E, what's E? I don't know. You can look it up anyway. Now that's really good for a leader. I would say if you're in a leadership role, if you have a team, getting your team to fill that in. And I've done it with various teams. I've been very transparent and honest with people before it. It's like, look, I'm doing this because this is what you need from a job. Like, aside from all of the, like, oh, I love to, I'm in the fire service. I love helping people. Yeah, that's great. But E is to do with earning. It's money, basically. It's like, yeah, you might like being in the fire service, but what makes you stay in a particular job, in a particular fire service, a particular role in that? And it's different for different people, right? So I had a team of 15 people during COVID, well, before COVID and for it, spread across multiple geographies, and they all had different reasons for wanting to be there. And the thing is, as a leader, you want to appeal to those drives, right? So a lot of them were about belonging. So belonging is being part of a team, like feeling like you're in a team. Some people don't want that from a job. They just want to go to work. They want to do this stuff. They don't want to chit chat. They don't want to be part of a club. They don't want a WhatsApp group or anything like that. Other people love that. So you have to be able to. And as a leader, obviously, you need to cater to all of these. There's no one size fits all. But I find that quite a good one. So if somebody isn't getting their needs met, then they'll leave. Eventually they'll leave. There's usually two reasons. Once you boil it all down, there's usually two reasons that people leave their roles. And one, the most common one, is they don't get on with their boss. So there's some sort of leadership problem. Typically, the boss is an asshole, which you see all too often, unfortunately. And the other one is that your needs aren't being met in some way, either financially or you're not getting recognition, you're not developing. You've been stuck in the same job for 4 years, you've been promised promotions that never arrive. Those kinds of things. So there's usually the two reasons people leave jobs. I've left for both. What was the most times you built the same kit? What was it? Ooh, that's an interesting question. Most times I've built the same kit. That's what I'm going to have to think about. Oh, no, I'll tell you what, I know exactly what it was. It was the Revell ME262 in 1/72nd scale, the 1990s kit, late 90s. They produced a new 1/72nd scale ME262 back then, and it was by far the best of any 1/72nd scale 262, and it still holds its own. It's still a really good kit. It's cheap as well. It's like £9, I think. And I did 5 of them, I think. So I did them in different variants. So one, I went all out, and I had a resin Jumo 004 engine. So got that, and did all the posing of the panels and everything. One I did as the one with the 50 BK50 50mm Pulksestora gun in it. I think it had like 12 rounds or something. Meant to break up bomber formations. One was a reconnaissance version. I think one was standard, and I think one was a review, something like that. But yeah, I love the 262. The 262 is probably one of my favorite aircraft of all time. I think it hits that sweet spot of a lot of cool design and happy coincidence. So it wasn't designed with swept wings for supersonic performance, or transonic, approaching sonic performance. It was for a better ground view because of the Jumo engines, and it just happened that the swept wing configuration also worked really well in the wind tunnel tests and stuff. And it's just like, oh, right, well, we'll go with this then, So I hadn't thought that swept wing, because if you think the Heinkel HE280, I think it was jet prototype that had just a slab wing, like the Meteor, basically. Whereas that swept wing, that V of the Schwalbe, and the kind of almost triangular profile, cross section of it. It's a cool looking plane. If you look at all the aircraft at that time, it just looked like something from space. I mean, God, going back to the B-17, can you imagine being a B-17 gunner and seeing this like small speck that is suddenly on you and then just goes past with a noise like you've never heard anything like before, and you don't have a chance to aim at it because it's that fast? It must have been absolutely terrifying. I mean, it must have been terrifying to be a B-17 bomber, or any bomber gunner, or pilot or navigator or whatever. It's just so far ahead in terms of the way it looked. And then you got all the cool German camouflage schemes and stuff. It just hits all of those pieces. Plus it's a tricycle undercarriage. That kind of makes it look more modern as well. So you got all these things. And originally it was a tail dragger when they first designed it. So all these little things just combined to create this thing, which was like, wow, just one of those wow moments of aviation. And it's by far not the only one. I mean, I think the TSR2, is another one of those wow moments. And I think there's various ones, going through. I think for me, the YF-23 rather than the F-22 is as well, because I think that's arguably was actually the better aircraft. Slightly less conventional. It's got better, by all accounts, it had a better stealth profile than the F-22. Plus, it had the kind of lower IR signature because of the cooling, those fanned out, what you call them, cooling plates at the back and whatever. Not quite the maneuverability because it didn't have those thrust-vectored engines that the F-22 has, but that turning point, the ATF, again, was one of those wow moments of aviation, which signaled a seed change in the way that aircraft are built and designed. Whereas before the F-117A, which is very much like like the Gloucester Whittle, we're just trying this technology out. It's just like it looks like a flying pyramid, So yeah, very, very long answer to a very simple question, but good question, Gary. Good question. Better late than never, Nick. So welcome. Just going. Company would be welcome, John. Absolutely. Hello, Dragon Queen, and thank you very much for that little drop by with the recommendation to hit the like button. So hello, welcome, thank you. We have more fire and rescue. Excellent. I must admit, you guys, I think fire and rescue, I think anybody in emergency services is doing obviously incredible work. I think all of them. I mean, the one that I have most affinity with, I think, is probably like paramedics, because of my medical, like life sciences background and stuff. Kind of, I understand more and can relate to. The one I admire most is fire, or let's say the rescue services, because I think the lifeboat service and anybody involved in that, because you're deliberately going into like say effed up situations, really dangerous places, to get people in the in their hour of need. I mean, you can't get much more heroic, I guess is the word. So yeah, it's as Ivan said, thanks for the service. I think it's a very noble thing to do. I mean, you only have to think of like 9/11, and the all of the emergency people that died, trying to save other people. It's the same sort of heroism as the guy that stays behind to man the machine gun to hold off the enemy while his friends leave. It's that selflessness. And because I'm a 7711 on a disc, it's a trait I don't have. Yeah, I'd be the guy back at HQ, planning the assault, not the. I'm not sure about best job in the world. Certainly one of the most honourable. I think if jobs were paid according, you see, I think, well, okay, I'll give you my quick take on humanity. I think we're pretty screwed up at the moment as a species, and I think you see it in all walks of life. War is one of those that brings out the highs and lows of humankind. In civilian life, you still get those highs and lows, right? You get the criminals, you get the drug dealers, the people literally benefiting from people's misery. And then the opposite side of that are like the firefighters and the paramedics, people saving people at their time of need. And then you have the rest of us kind of all in the middle, kind of doing, whatever we do. I can't remember what the point I was going to make, but oh yeah, that was it, about pay. If all the pay in the world was related to like how we actually contribute to society, it would be very different, wouldn't it? I mean, very, very different. It's just like, I mean, YouTube wouldn't pay anything then. Valueless to society. But yeah, I mean, jobs like, I mean, doctors, doctors don't get paid if they save people's lives. Paramedics, they don't get paid enough. They work all hours and they save people's lives. we've mentioned the rescue services. They work horrible hours, 24 hours, in shifts, and they save people's lives. Compare that to a local politician. Yeah, not quite sure we got that right, but capitalism, it's kind of representative democracy and capitalism are the best government types we've come up with as a species so far. I don't think we're done developing quite yet. I think in the future they'll look back at this time as an interesting period of history, but I think they'll also look back at it in the way that we look back into the Victorian times and things and think, my God, they thought that was normal, empire, and how did they live like that? But I mean, we kind of do think like that at the moment as well. Like, how do we live like this? How did the world get like this? But you know what I'm saying. Yes, I think you're right there. That shark-like shape, it did look. It's kind of like pointy, but not too pointy. Yeah, it is definitely. That's what Doggo should be. So I do occasionally watch. Oh, he's got a really weird name. Is it Jim Karuga or something? There's a series called Sitting with Dogs, and he just goes to rescues, and I'm sure people have heard of him. A guy in the US goes to US shelters. He's a dog chef, basically. He makes his own treats and food and stuff, but he goes and does all this stuff. And some absolutely heart-melting things, and dogs are just so forgiving. They're just such a trusting species. Yeah. Unlike cats, and I've had cats, I'm not anti-cat. It's just a very, very different characters. I mean, if you got a disc test for cats and dogs, they would be opposite ends of the spectrum completely. Question: have you ever given up a model and binned it? And what was the model? No, I have never binned a model. I don't know whether that's a point of pride or a point of shame. I kind of, maybe it goes to that, high D, high I. I can't admit defeat. I might abandon it. I mean, I have models that I started and have left for literally decades. I mean, a lot of that is circumstantial, moves, children, marriage, divorce, all that kind of stuff. But some of it, it also, there might be circumstantial reasons, but also convenient, right? It's like, if you don't want to go to work and you're sick, you can't go to work because you're sick, but it's also, you didn't want to go to work, so it's kind of good, it's not good that you feel crap, but so it's a bit like Palestine, and I don't want to be political on this, but Hamas committing atrocities doesn't mean that Israel carrying out airstrikes with civilians around is acceptable. Both can be appalling, right? I'm not saying I don't want to be political that way. I'm just saying it isn't a binary thing. It's not like there is a right and wrong. You can have, both things can be true at the same time. Two wrongs don't make a right. And with models, it can be circumstantially put aside, and also that's kind of good because I kind of got sick of it. I mean, there are models. I don't think I've really had that situation where I just think I just don't want to do this anymore. I've thought about it on a short scale. It's like, I don't want to do this right now, but not that kind of, that I would never want to come back to it. In my mind, I mean, I may never come back to some of the models I've started, right? That's just a fact with the limited number of years that hopefully decades, that I still have on this mortal coil. It's unlikely I will finish my stash. Yeah, that's just a a statistical improbability that I'll finish it all. But I kind of still have the intent of returning to a lot of those things. Yeah. So when I buy a model, I'll always have an idea of what I want to do with it. Right. And I know that's not always the case for some people, but I usually have an idea of like, I can visualize, I'm a very visual person as well, kind of what I want the end result to be. That might not be where it ends up, but I have that, initial vision, if you like, intent. So, never been to model. None of giving up on it, at least. I have been to model that I've given to my children, like to, I can't remember, it was I've mentioned it before, and it's like a Eastern European manufacturer of the Beriev BE6. I had a couple of them. I paid a mighty £1 for each of them. So that was the first kit that I did with my kids when they were really young. I mean, God, I can't even remember. Like Oscar would probably be like 4, so Lottie would be 2, and just because it didn't matter, right? Just wanted them to spend some time with me. I could put it together, and they could paint it. They could paint it whatever they liked. I think it ended up blue and pink. And like as they got older, and because they then played with it and stuff, and it got broken obviously, and repaired and broken, and eventually when we moved and they kind of grew out of it, that got sidelined. But that's a very different situation. Yeah. So yeah, no, never given up on a model completely. There's always hope. Okay. Most firefighters will tell you it's the best job in the world. I'm sure they will. And I'm sure they believe it. And maybe it's true. I don't know. I can think of jobs that I think would be better. It depends what you mean by best, doesn't it? It's kind of, now I'm thinking of it, it's just like you could do a video on it. What's the best job in the world? But I don't think it's paid well enough. I mean, it might be paid well. I don't think it's paid well enough. If you can be an actor and get paid, a 7-figure sum for, let's face it, doing a bit of pretending, even if that bit of pretending is for like a whole year, then somebody who runs into burning buildings and saves people, I think, needs more. just saying, how we value things is not based on the merit of the position. It's how much money it can make, unfortunately. Be careful. You don't want to admit to being a seaman. Wow. Customers part of the RNLI crew, which won a Pride of Britain award. A lot of work is volunteer. Yeah. The RNLI is our volunteers, aren't they? I mean, it is incredible, really. And again, you're not talking about. It's not just people who like boats, who like to go out on the sea a bit. I mean, if you look at the conditions that the RNLI go out in, they are, pretty bad. You see, I don't even like rain, so again, not a job for me. Yeah. You see, I think being a politician is and politics in general. I think it's one of those things that I can see the benefits of AI in the future. If you take out, if you've got a bunch of AI to work out what is the best way to run, like this hospital, for instance, and you could cut out all of the layers of, because there are a lot of layers, well, at least in the NHS and UK, a lot of layers of middle management, which is completely unnecessary. I mean, I've worked with the NHS a lot, right, over 30 years. And it's always the same. Clinicians don't get the decisions they need a lot of the time. A lot of it's made by middle management, and a lot of the money goes on pointless crap. So yeah, if you could get an AI to actually do all of that, cut out all of that crap, remove, I mean, for one thing, you remove corruption, which is one of the prime sources of, drain on things like the NHS and, other stuff. Welcome, John.
How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well, thanks, John. Yourself?
Good. Just been enjoying your stream.
I've got a drink, so.
Cheers.
Cheers. I'd much prefer a beer, but I've only got wine in the house. Well, and spirits, but it's a bit early.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could. Somehow we've ended up on AI, but we did start off the evening with the subject of commission builds.
Right.
On this 1/12 scale Tamiya Lotus that's in progress. So, what about you, John? Have you done a commission?
I have not. I have built 2 models for people. I built a BF 109 for a lab mate back in 93. Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was he just loved him, and I said, "Hey, man, how you buy the kit?" That was it. Just the kit and the supplies. I think I added a few dollars for because I had the joy of being able to build it.
Yeah,
and I gave it to him. And it came in a box. I bought the clear plastic thing, so stay in good condition. And he loved it. Yeah. But I've never built anything for anyone for money. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I did a Spitfire and a Hurricane for my ex's grandmother, and she liked them. She obviously lived through the war, and was very. She was very British, for want of a better word.
I got you.
She named, so she had a little Jack Russell, which she named Ajax after HMS Ajax. The plucky destroyer that went on various rampages, including being in hunting the Bismarck and stuff. She wouldn't drink German wine. For instance, we had to be careful when we went there and took a bottle of wine not to buy German wine, which was difficult because you like white wine, and it's just like, well, I make quite good white wine.
Right.
But yeah, I drove a German car, and it was like that was a bit touch and go. So yeah, I did those for her but that was like a Christmas present or something. And it was weird getting those back when she died. That was what I found. It was because you give these things,
right,
and you think that's it, and it's just like, yeah, when she died, it was like my ex at the time, came back with these, and just like, I didn't expect that. I don't kind of know what to do with them, like, feels a bit awkward.
It just reminds you of her passing, really.
Yeah, exactly. But just a couple of questions here. There was one about, here we go. Didn't the ME262s didn't tend to blow up. That's the ME163, which was a rocket. That was a rocket interceptor.
That little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Comet. Yeah. Yeah, because one of the pilots had only a flea, but oh ho written on the side of his It was more the ME163 was powered by C-Stoff and T-Stoff, which is well, concentrated hydrogen peroxide, which is not a pleasant substance to start with, and then an even more unpleasant substance, anhydrous hydrazine. So the flight suits were actually rubber because that stuff will melt you, and a lot of the pilots died because once the rocket engine had finished and became a glider and went back to base, it didn't have landing gear, it had a skid, and there would be a little bit of C-Stoff and T-Stoff still left in the tanks, and when it hit the ground, that bump sometimes was enough to ignite the residual fuel, and they just exploded. I think that's probably preferable because that's quick rather than being dissolved in your flight suit by anhydrous hydrazine.
Yes.
But not much. So yeah, 262s didn't blow up, but yeah, the engines. I mean, it was the dawn of the jet age, right? So the engines weren't great. They were unreliable. They tended to flame out. You had to treat them really carefully, apparently, or they used to flame out. And it was really almost impossible to get them restarted in the air. It didn't really matter that they were only rated for about 20 hours before terminal destruction, because at the time, you're more likely to get shot down in a few hours than if you made it 20 hours, you were probably already an ace. So they would just swap the engines out. So there's a lot of statistics get thrown around in arguments about late war German stuff, and some of them are relevant and some of them aren't. It's just like the engine's rated 20 hours. It's like, yeah, how often did they make it to 20 hours? More likely to get shot down by a P-51 following you to the base, and which is what they did. Let's see. I'm too stubborn for my own good sometimes. An almost fanatical refusal to give up on a kit once I start it. Yeah. But I will put it away. What about you, John? Have you given up on a kit, binned the kit?
Twice.
Oh.
When so there's a threshold, right, where it just ceases to be related in any way to a hobby. Where
it feels like a punishment. Yeah.
Right. There's zero enjoyment to it. It's like it becomes going out to pick up the dog poo in the backyard, and so on two occasions I have several shelf queens, but there's and one was and poor Jeff Don, he just bought this kit too, and it was my first video. It was that it was the that ambulance,
mm-hmm.
And I finished that first part. I was going on, and finally I'm just like, I cannot invest anymore. I can't throw good money after bad anymore. I just can't deal with this kit anymore. It was just such a struggle. So I binned it, but only twice.
I have see, I don't know if this counts. I have finished kits and then I accidentally destroyed them. Usually, actually, the times that happened has been in moves, where a box has got crushed or something, and I take the stuff out and it's broken, and I don't have the will to repair it. But quite often I'll reuse parts. So I do have some sort of Franken kits that are made of one or more, old dead models. But I don't think that comes under the same category. That's kind of recycling. Hello, Brian. Good to see you.
Hey, Brian.
And I should actually send you Jeff as well. You mentioned Jeff, Alec, John Alec. Sorry. You should send him a Discord. Send him a Discord link for tonight. For next week. Well, maybe not next week, because exciting news for next week. So as you know, I do some reviews for ICM. ICM send me stuff. I have the B26 on its way. The
Oh,
148
wow.
scale Marauder is on its
Oh,
way. And I don't know if you saw, they're putting, people liked the box art so much they've made a calendar out of it, and they're putting a
wow.
calendar in all of the B26 kits that are going out, the first batch, which I think is really cool.
That's
Cool
awesome.
thing to do. But I was chatting to Valeria, who is the she kind of handles all the export stuff and does all the management stuff, a while ago, and asked her if she'd be interested in coming on a podcast. And basically, she said yes.
Cool.
So, but pre-recorded, mainly because the concerns about not being a native English speaker. Although I have to say, her English is excellent. So we're going to be recording that. Let's see, today's 3rd. So we're recording that, I think, on the Monday or Tuesday. So I'll record that, obviously edit it to not, I wanted to say sanitize, but that's not the right word. Just to make it more coherent, I guess.
I
And
got
then
you.
do that as a recording. So in StreamYard, for those of you who don't know, you can play a recording as a live stream. And then, of course, has the advantage of, we can be live as well and then answer any questions that come up in the chat. So that recording is going to happen next week. So I've given her a list of stuff, which is one of the reasons, those of you who've seen the community post about if you could ask ICM a question, what would it be? That's because I'm going to be putting those questions to Valeria. So if you do have any questions that you would like to ask of ICM, sensible questions, I will edit them before presenting them. So any requests for 100 kits, or asking Valeria out on a date or something, they'll get screened out.
What color her eyes are.
Yeah, you can see what color her eyes are. Any sensible questions will be collated, because some of the questions are related, obviously, so I want to put those kind of together in the bit that I'm asking, about, I don't know, structure of the company, for instance. So any questions that kind of fall into that category, I'll put in there. So next week probably isn't the best time to invite a whole bunch of extra people that kind of weren't involved in that, because it might be a bit bizarre and they'll just spend most of the time twiddling their thumbs, which is probably not the best experience. But yeah, please do send Jeff, and we'll get Brian the link as well if they want to pop in.
Absolutely. They're both fantastic chat stream guests, so very pleasant to have on.
And of course, speaking of Brian and Got Fuels, we have the Terry Thacker tribute build. Is it live now, John, or is it coming up?
As of Monday.
It was Monday, wasn't it? Yeah. I thought I'd seen that stream, but then I thought, is that you get in your mind, you can't think, was that a private one or was that a public one?
No, it went live on the 1st, and there's no end date.
No.
Yeah.
So for those of you who have ordered decals from my website, 3 Man's Model Moments, we got a slight hiccup. So John was very kind enough to be the kind of US hub to send me the decals along with my tribute build kit. They arrived into the UK at the weekend, and then of course Heathrow Customs have held them, so I have to pay some sort of, I don't know, annoyance charge or something. So they haven't sent me the details of that yet, but I'll get that paid. So slight delay. Hopefully they'll still be here by the end of the week. Worst case weekend maybe. So yeah, worst case scenario, they'll be going out next week. But at least they are in the UK now. They haven't kind of dropped out of a luggage case halfway across the Atlantic or anything. We know where they are. We just haven't got them. So yeah, price of Brexit, I guess. Everybody has to have their 2 cents. But yes, those are coming. So if you want to get involved in a tribute build, go to Got Fuels, so Brian's YouTube channel. Check out all the stuff there. All the details are there. Build whatever you like. In terms of decals, I think there are only a couple. I have to do a quick check. I think I'm pretty much out of my original order. So just bear that in mind, that those may not be available too much longer. Don't all rush and order them, though, because if I get 7 orders, it'll be first come, first served, I'm afraid. So if I get 7 orders tonight, for instance, I will be refunding people. So might just be best to wait, so I can consolidate that.
Cool.
That's an interesting one, actually, because I don't know that.
Yeah.
What do letters ICM stand for? Yeah. I'll add that one in.
Good question.
I'll ask them if they will be doing Australian versions, but obviously, requests are slightly different from questions. I kind of want to keep it. I don't want to be begging, it's a bit of a different dynamic, I
Keep
think.
it flowing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they have done. I mean, we obviously have the South African and the New Zealand versions in the I can't remember what they called it, Commonwealth Forces one, I think. But yeah, so Australian ones would be nice. We'll have to see. Yeah, so that was just the kind of little sidetrack about ICM next week. Just scrolling back up because I kind of got diverted on that. We're seeing Brian pop in. Who actually says it's actually about bedtime for me. Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, he gets up really early.
Yeah, I know.
Hours, so
when we had our first, I think it was our first WhatsApp chat. It might have been on email. I don't know, but I was doing the maths on the time, and I was just like, "Wow, that's accounting for time difference." Yeah, that's early. I'm definitely not a lark. I'm a night owl. So. Yes. How about you, John? Do you think you'll build your entire stash before you shuffle off this mortal coil?
At some point, because my stash is it's pretty small.
That's
Intentionally keep it really small, and but I do have. If I didn't buy anything more, I try to be pretty selective about what I buy. If I didn't buy anything more, I'd probably have enough to get me through the next 12 months. Yeah. And I've got maybe 10 kits here. 10, 12, 13. That was my latest count, was 13. Yeah. So
unlucky for some, lucky for others.
Mm-hmm.
One of those bizarre cultural things where numbers are different things to different people. Is it 8 that's unlucky in Chinese?
Very lucky.
Yeah.
It's I think 8 is that's their lucky number.
Well, that's their lucky one. Yeah.
Yeah,
because you get the 8-sided the octagons and stuff, don't you? What's the unlucky one for them?
I think there's so much that's unlucky. My mother-in-law is superstitious. So, we're trying to do like a family photo or something, and there has to be an even number of people.
Really?
She comes in, it has to be she's so superstitious. Yeah, wow. It's crazy.
Wow. I volunteer on a weekly basis at my local animal shelter. I walk dogs that are awaiting adoption. It's a very cool thing to do. So if you have free time and you've got a local shelter I mean, they'll always be grateful for your help. And again, dogs are a very giving animal. You know, being pack animals, they want to belong. So you just they just give unconditionally, don't they? I mean,
Mhm.
and it is very gratifying. So
Must
good to
love
hear, Jim.
dogs.
And yeah, good model to adopt.
That's cool.
Yeah, unfortunately, my personal shopper is me. Yes. Because Maria always asks me, text me if you want anything. I'm popping into Tesco's or Lidl or wherever on the way back, and I always like say yes and then forget, or text when she's home. That's my usual trick. I usually text her just as she's left the supermarket, so I can only blame myself, really. Oh, Lost Lager and Hobgoblin Pale. Hobgoblin, I know. Lost Lager, I don't.
Yeah, I've had Hobgoblin.
Yeah, I'm more of a kind of a Hobgoblin, IPA bitter man than lager. Lager in the summer, a nice hot day, cool, refreshing beer. That's good. But
Yeah.
but then oh, nice. Yeah,
Stuff. It's a what's called a West Coast IPA. It's from San Diego. Yeah.
yeah. I think I've had it actually.
Cool.
Yeah, because you get a lot of microbreweries out there, don't you, as well?
It's huge here in the States. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I first went to California, it was kind of just starting to become kind of big. You had, oh God, what was it? What's the one that kind of started up in the late 90s or early 90s in California?
I mean, there's Lagunitas. There's Bear Republic. There's Stone. Stone is now basically a macro brewery.
Yeah.
There's Green Flash. Um, uh, Ballast Point. Um,
You got
oh,
lots of,
oh, yeah, I know what you're thinking. It's Sierra Nevada. Is it Sierra
yeah,
Nevada?
yeah, and Sam Adams and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah, Brewdog. Brewdog is Scottish, isn't it?
It
Doesn't
is. Yeah, yeah.
Brewdog makes the
Brewdog's good. The punk IPAs. Yeah,
yeah. I've had Brewdog out here. Yeah, I make it.
that's right. Battle of the River Plate. Yeah, HMS Ajax. She was a plucky little thing. Hence the name of the Jack Russell. As you know, Jack Russells tend to be, well, let's say they have personalities bigger than their size.
That was the most difficult dog we ever owned. Was a Jack Russell. We eventually we had to find a home for it because it was not thriving in our house. We weren't being abusive at all. It was just this this dog needs a home that can make it happy, right? Because
Yeah.
it just wasn't happy, and yeah. So
I think that's actually it's kind of like also when it's finally time to say goodbye to them, right? It's a really difficult decision, I think, of like when to let a dog go,
mhm,
or any animal, because there's a point when it's just like I'm just doing this for me rather than for the well-being of the animal.
right.
And I think that goes for whether having it in your house or when it's finally come time to say goodbye. We had a cat called Clover, who I'd had since she was a kitten. She was what they call a magic cat, um, in that she had an extra claw, like a dew claw.
Okay.
They had to be surgically removed because they just caught on anything because there's no bone there. Run to the litter, mad as a box of frogs. Yeah, and our main cat. So I had Clover separately. Didn't intend to get a cat, but as I say, she run to the litter. Somebody had promised to take him. Her, sorry, didn't happen. So I, kind of took took her off their hands because she was the last of the litter. They
Yeah.
didn't have anywhere for her to go. So it's like, yeah, okay, if it's that or a shelter, yeah, well, I'll take it.
Right.
At the time, I was living separately from my ex, who was then only my girlfriend. She was doing she was living down in Bristol, I think, at the time, and our main cat was there, so she had Phoebe. And then when we got together, then the two cats kind of sorted out. And our main cat, Phoebe, she was a hunter. You know, you get some cats who are just like ultimate killers. You know, she caught a bat once, a bat
That's
at
crazy.
night. I mean, it's just like, how do you catch something that has ultrasound hearing at night? And it's just like she was lethal. You know, um, and she didn't eat it or anything. She just caught it and brought it to us and sort of like deposited it and sort of went sort of like like I caught this. It's disgusting. Do you want it? You know, no. But she laid down the like Clover was just like, you know, did the usual siding on with the big broom tail and stuff. And Phoebe just laid down the law, just like, bat, 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 bat. And then that was the hierarchy, you know.
Right.
It was like that for years, and then we adopted another stray cat that came along, and again, you know, Phoebe was laid out the law, but Clover just couldn't get on with this new cat, and eventually we had to rehome the other cat to, fortunately, my ex-mother-in-law's boyfriend. But Clover was never right, and like she kept doing stuff like going and pooing in the newly laundered fresh washing, and it's like,
Oh, that's weird.
yeah, and that, well, it was because we just started having our children, so she couldn't deal with like the new like human beings
Oh,
on
I
the
got you.
scene with all so yeah, so we
She was
had to,
pretty Amber Heard.
yeah, yeah, so we didn't put her in jail,
Yeah.
but we did get her rehomed, but we got her rehomed with, you know, somebody she was a, you know, single student, you know, could devote all the time to her, and she was absolutely fine, you know.
Cool.
So it was just that was the right situation for her at the time. You know, she just needed that attention. She couldn't deal with the extra humans, you know. Just looking down now because there's been quite a lot of comments as we've been chatting.
The question was, at what at what number does the stash become, excessive? And my first thought was Dutch Dave, right? So I think Dutch Dave is in four figures. He has like a four-figure stash.
Wow,
Yeah.
4 figures is big.
Yeah.
I thought I had a big stash. Mine is, I mean, the last time I updated scale mates, it was about 760 something.
Oh my God.
And I've acquired more. It's probably pushing like around 800, I would say, at the moment.
That's incredible, man.
But a 4-figure stash is impressive. I mean, that's a shop at that stage, and I don't count shop stock, obviously.
It's like a model shop. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, a lot of chat about different beers. Okay, that's a fair point. That beyond 400, I accepted I was just collecting. Reached double that. Oh wow. Okay.
God.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say actually, part of my stash, especially now I've got the shop, I do look at like the kits that are, you know, boxed, unbuilt, everything. I do think maybe I'll just put that in the shop. You know, if it's nothing special, by that I mean if I can get it from a supplier, then I think, well, I could just put that into the shop. Somebody else could enjoy that. You know, um, they're probably going to build it before I do. If I put it in the shop now and somebody buys it, even in 3 months, they'll probably still build it before I would. So, isn't it better that I do that? You know. Because if I really want to build it, I can buy it again. You know, unfortunately, a lot of my stash is stuff that doesn't apply to. Principally because of kinds of subjects I like, you know, tend to be not well covered by a lot of companies. So I think that's changing a little bit with some of the Chinese manufacturers, though. So Graham says my stash is 207. I have an Excel spreadsheet to track it. Now,
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
well,
That's what I would do, but I just don't have that many.
now I started doing this, and Graham, it's not a bad way to do it. However, I think tracking it on ScaleMates is actually better. I'll tell you why. Is ScaleMates, you can link it to the exact kit, and it has the instructions and stuff should you ever lose it or whatever. So the exact, not only the tooling, but like the publication, whoever, you know, whatever year it was done, and everything. And it's searchable. So you can search it in the same way you can search ScaleMates, and you can export to Excel as well. So you haven't lost anything. So if you want like an Excel to do some meta-analysis or whatever, you can still do that. I took the time a couple of years ago to transfer my stash onto ScaleMates, and I don't regret it. How do I make you a moderator, John, in this in StreamYard? You'll have to tell me afterwards because
Yes. I have to look it up.
Yeah, it would be it'd be useful if there's just, you know, whoever comes in can moderate, can bring up questions and stuff, you know.
Right. Because Gordon, Hobby Time, he has 2,103, his last count. At 4:44, he posted that.
Wow.
And Dutch Dave is now in, or at least I see him there at 4:46. Yeah.
Wow. If you have okay, so I think as a general rule, if your kit count is higher than the current year, you've probably got too many. So 2024 is your cutoff, right? You've got to get rid of, you know, 80 kits.
Yeah.
You've got to do 80 kits in the next 6 months. Buy them, but like give them away, sell them, do them, you know, too many.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Now, you see, I do use an Excel to keep track of my paints, John. That is a good thing. But of course, I also have scanned mine and they're all in LAB format, and
Oh, that's right. Yep. That was a great video.
I do all kinds of other crazy, wacky stuff with that. Now, there we go. Scaleweight stash list and an Excel backup. Always have an Excel backup.
Nice.
That's a very liberating way of looking at it, isn't it? I keep my stash at various hobby stores. I just haven't bought them yet. That's a much more cost-effective way to manage your stash. That's probably the most sensible way I've heard of, actually.
That's funny. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try that. Oh. That gives me the option to ban you, delete your comment, put you in timeout. I don't see an option to add as a moderator. We'll look at it. I'll look at it later.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. Peter has 717 there.
That is sizable.
Yeah.
That is pretty sizable.
Incredible.
Oh dear.
I'm where you are, Phil.
I think that's probably a healthier place to be, Phil,
Mm.
than when you admit you have a problem. Yeah, I feel a bit like our stash size is a bit like going to an Alcanon meeting. It's just like I've been modeling for 45 years. My current stash size is, I haven't bought a model kit for 34 days. Congratulations, Alex. It's your 1 month.
Here's your coin.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be progressing much further. I almost bought a kit today, and I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm in a shop. What am I doing?
Plastaholic. Yeah.
Yes. 157 built aircraft on the shelves, though, Paul, is pretty admirable. That's good going. That is good going. Yep, Hobby Color Converter app is pretty good at tracking the paint stash. The one thing I found with the paint apps, though, because I actually spoke to a guy. This is one of the things. If my son was here, he would just like. So we used to have a podcast together. So if you listen to Beyond the Box at all, if you look at the early episodes, because it's all on the same Buzzsprout feed, it used to be the Hub Systems podcast, which was the one I used to do with my son about a game called Firestorm Armada. And I like going back and listening to those as well, because it's like, it's with my son, and it's just a point in time. It's quite cool for me. Sorry. And so we used to get like guests on, and we used to listen to a podcast called Jaded Gamercast. And one time I said to Oscar, it's like, oh, I've got Lang and Nathan coming in from the Jaded Gamercast podcast. It's like, how did you get to do that? And it's like, well, I just reached out and asked them. So it's like this kind of current theme, consistent theme that we had is just like, I always say to Oscar, oh, I got this. And it's just like, how did you do that? And it's like, well, I just asked them. It's just like, you just get in touch, find out where these people are, get their contact details, and just ask them a simple question. They can only, I said, what's the worst they can do? They can say no. On the other hand, they could say yes. So anyway, big segue to, I reached out to a guy who was doing one of the converter apps on Android, and because I had a few odd things come up, and he was like, oh, well, it's still getting developed. Thanks for letting us know the bugs and things. And I asked how they developed, where they get the color differences, because I said I've had some which I've got the results and they kind of off a bit. So I was wondering how you get the comparisons, which are closest. He said, well, we get all the LAB values from the manufacturers. And that's when I started, that kind of set me on the path. I think I actually mentioned this in the video, of doing the video and measuring them myself, because they don't test them themselves, putting in the app. They just take what the manufacturers say. So, of course, the manufacturers will all test under different conditions. They'll all, like, some of them will scan them. Some of them will just give them the formula values and things. So that's why I kind of started doing them all, because it's a single point then. It's a single set of testing conditions. So you get realistic results rather than something that is theoretical, let's say. Now, which John are you meaning?
Oh, it's probably me. Yeah, I just responded to it. Yeah. So I started following them when they first got promoted up to the championship. I didn't really. I've been following our Broth for forever. That's where my parents are from, and I watched a lot of championship, and I watched a lot of the Premier League. But I didn't really have a team, and they came up, and I love an underdog, and I love the story, and they had Matt Ritchie was on the team, and I'm like, that's my team. And so I've been following him ever since. Oh, right on. Okay, you're from Southampton. Cool. Hey, I think you guys are still in the running to come back up. So yeah, you guys are still in the hunt. That's good.
You see, this is the reason John Alec is on a lot of our streams here in the UK, because he's kind of an honorary Englishman, because he loves an underdog. That's kind of a typical British trait, you know. He watches football and calls it football, not soccer, you know. and he supports an obscure team that will never win. You know, I mean, what's more British than that?
That's funny. So
Right?
we finished ninth. It was the 16-17 or the 16-17 year. Or was it the year after 17-18? I don't know. We finished ninth, but hey, whether they're in the championship or the premiership, it doesn't matter. And one thing about Bournemouth, and especially our supporters, we kind of get along with everybody. We don't, not sort of the hooligan type. I don't hold a grudge against, sort of any team. I don't care. I just like watching our team play and kind of.
We're about 50 minutes from Bournemouth. Yeah, it's the closest place for us to the sea.
Okay.
So yeah, Poole and Bournemouth. It's pretty much all the same.
Nice.
So I'll probably get in trouble for saying that. Sunderland. Now, that's where I first went to university. Or actually, Poly. I went to Polytechnic. Sunderland Poly.
Oh, that's way up there.
Yeah. We were. You'll find this entertaining, John, with your knowledge of my take on woke society. Is even back then. So this is like very late, like 89, 90. Like I go up as a fresh-faced 18-year-old up to Sunderland. I hadn't even heard of Sunderland before. I got a place through clearing, right?
Right.
Met a bunch of other guys, and there are all these societies for all kinds of different groups, and we all got together. There's a group of us, like a house with 10 guys in, and well, we actually went to the student union and said, "Can we form a society called NormSoc?" And I was just like, "You can form a society. What's it about?" We were just like, "It's just for normal people." That they rejected our application.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But yeah, we said we had everything planned out. All the T-shirts. We had like T-shirts planned that said Sunderland Polytechnic. It's your own fault. You should have worked harder. Yeah. That's the. I have told very few people about the NormSoc. It'll get me cancelled today.
Yeah, it's the same here. It's everybody can have an organization or a group, except just regular people.
Yeah. You're showing your white privilege there, John.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I watched a YouTube video before coming on stream with Maria, which was because she watched a couple of episodes in Barcelona, and she's got to wait till the series finishes before we get the 1 week free subscription to Disney Plus and watch the whole series in a 2-day binge of Shogun. Apparently, it's really good.
The new one, right?
Yeah. But apparently there was an article because she's like, wait, play that. And it was like,
I know where you're going, man.
Where are the black people in Shogun?
Yes,
like, but it was a guy called Metatron, and the reason I like the video he did is because it's very analytical, and it says, the actual premise of the question is quite valid because feudal Japan, there were black navigators on Dutch ships and stuff, and the article has actually been changed when it's been copied and pasted to other places, especially things like Reddit, and they've cut out sections, but it was, it's just like, you actually go through and it's just like, if you take the lower numbers of like 12 million population of that time of Japan, it's just like work out how many Europeans would have been there, maybe 2000. And, you know, from then,
Most. Yeah.
the black Africans that would have been there, like as a proportion of them, you know, maybe 10% if you know, on the high side. So you got 200 in 15 million, and it would have mainly been around, of course, the European trading ports. I was just like, that's where they are, you know. They are represented proportionally correctly, historically accurately, you know, about 1 in 2000 or less, you know.
Right.
It's just like, come on, guys. Yes, it's fiction, but it's fiction based in an actual historical reality, you know. So
They did the same thing. There's a Danish. It's a movie that takes place in maybe 500 years ago in Denmark, and Mads Mikkelsen and somebody else. They were in a press conference, and the person asked a very similar question, and the guy and Mads Mikkelsen, he's a fantastic actor.
yeah.
Most people know him as the villain in Casino Royale, but he's been in all kinds of stuff.
Or Hannibal in Hannibal.
Yeah, and he's in Hannibal, and he practically just like, you know, spits out his water. He's like, "What?" You know, and so he's like, "This is a story that takes place in, you know, 16th century Denmark." So they try to, you know, there's that historical context that, you know, we're trying to make something historically correct, right? And yeah, I know.
Yeah, like the Netflix series on Cleopatra. It's,
Right.
how to offend an entire country.
Yeah, Egypt didn't like that very much.
No. Well, we just had in Scotland, they passed a rather troubling new hate law, which J.K. Rowling has tweeted a lot about. And we've had hate speech laws, you know, in the UK for a long time. But I think what a lot of people don't realise about the one that was passed in Scotland over the weekend is the barrier or the threshold now in terms of evidence required is basically none. So they've lowered it to the point where the police are saying they'll investigate all accusations. And it's like, well, wait a minute. You don't even investigate all burglaries. It's just like, guys, we've got to get a grip on this because this is sounding a lot more like 1984 than 2024. You know, it's, it's a bit like political correctness when it first came into the 80s, when it was taken to its logical extreme. You know, it's kind of like introduced and then almost swang so far, and then it came back, and then it normalized. You know, and it seems at the moment we're on that swing out. You know, and it's like, yes, there's a reason for these things being enacted, good reasons, but the logical extreme of them actually does more harm to the original intent than it should, right? And you know, we need to get to that balance of happy medium of, you know, we shouldn't be banning people speaking. You know, they're actually talking about children being able to report their parents for conversations and things. It's like, you know, the last time I heard this was in a little place called Germany during the 1930s. It's like, and that's not a good reference to make.
It's kind of, I am Matthew Hopkins, witch fighter, right? It's yeah.
Anytime it's like McCarthyism, in the States, and you know, communism and the
we had
Stalin.
that here, especially, you know, in the 50s, you know.
Yeah.
And we recognize that as being really bad.
Yeah, we do now, but at the time it was just like, red's under the bed, and
Yeah.
but still. Anyway, back to the chat, just in case they've mentioned anything before we got off on our political rants. We probably lost everybody.
I think we get respectable. Yeah.
Originally angling, what do you think of the Sea King kit? Now, is that the airfix 148th or 172nd? The 172nd kit I haven't done. And by all accounts, it's very nice. It looks a bit fiddly for me because it's got really, really thin pieces for the seats. The 148th scale kit I've done both the review and build on the channel, so you can see exactly what I think of it. 148, yeah, it's a really good kit. It's really nice. It has the only thing it suffers with is the endemic airfix problem of its QC. So if you get if you get a good one, you get a really good one. And if not, then you're into airfix customer care. But the kit itself, I mean, it's got some fantastic detail. It builds in little sub-assemblies. I'm not a helicopter fan, but I really like the Sea King. So I think that probably says what I think of it generally. And yes, it does have some nice decal options. I think, and I mentioned this on the review, I think one of the really nice things about that is they track a single aircraft through its entire career. So, they've took it in its original HAS-1, the anti-submarine, military version as it was intended, through the later version and then to search and rescue. So it shows the evolution of the airframe, which I think is a really cool idea. And it means you get very different possibilities with the same kit, which I think is really nice. What do you think of 1/35th scale airplanes? So I understand why some manufacturers do 1/35th scale, especially if they are things like ICM's helicopters, for instance, the cargo helicopters, because they're ideal for dioramas with vehicles of the same scale. But it does mean they're a little bit out of sync with 1/32nd. It tends to be, if you like, more traditional. So I think you just have to judge each kit on its merits and find where you're comfortable with. I don't really have a particular scale. I know like a lot of people will say, I don't build 1/72nd, or I'm a 48 scale modeler or whatever. And I've only really just thought about this just now, but I've built basically any scale. I really think about the kit and what I want to do, rather than I want consistency. I started off kind of more like that with 1/72nd, but I kind of shied away from it when the reality of me not having a large mansion where I could display a complete museum of 1/72nd scale aircraft didn't happen. So what about you, John? What do you think of the scale?
So the vast majority of my armor builds are 1/35th, and I agree with you. I think that's why they do it, because the difference between 32nd and 35th is 9%.
Yeah.
So it can make a difference if you're putting it in a diorama.
Yeah. So Rich and Neo did the HU5. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think it's the other good thing about that kit is you could buy 2 or 3 and end up with very, very different builds each time, which, let's face it, is probably, from both a manufacturer and a modeler point of view, is kind of the perfect kit, right? Where you could buy several instances of the same kit and build it multiple times, because Airfix will love that. You've bought 3 kits instead of 1, and you as a modeler, can start off with one version and then build something completely different out of the same box, something that you're already familiar with. You know which bits you can go quickly through, the bits then that you've got to take a bit more time, care with. So I think I'd love to see more kits that you can do that level of variety with, because generally it's, the decal's different, or it's a slight difference. You can build it with, a civilian version or not. or the reconnaissance version, So you got maybe 2 builds out of it. But are they that different that you're probably just going to choose one and go with it, unless it's a subject you really want. So anyway, folks, we've gone a little bit long, a little bit over, but naturally so. I don't think we forced that. So as always, John, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Next week, as I say, we should have, as by the bell, that was very timely, John.
Sorry about no,
that was good.
Text.
I'll have to employ you to do that at certain times. I'll send you a list of times that I want that. So next week we should have the interview with Valeria and ICM on the stream, and obviously it will still be a stream. So I'd love to, John, you're more than welcome to come on, and if we can get some others on as well to talk about some of the answers that ICM gave and what we think that might mean for the hobby going forward, and for ICM as a company. I've been really impressed with the stuff that they've been doing. I think they keep continuously raising the bar for themselves. I've also seen, and also talking with Valeria before, some of what they've been talking about and some of their passion. ICM is, as you'll see, it's a family business. So it's changed a lot, in which they say themselves in the last 20 years. So it's almost like a family version of airfix in that way, that it's changed. Surprisingly bigger than I thought as well. But anyway, I'll not put any spoilers in.
We'll look forward to that next Wednesday. Yeah,
that should be a good one. So anyway, thanks to everybody that joined us tonight. Thanks for the questions. Great to talk about all these bizarre subjects, and thanks for sticking with us for all of the meandering and the political digressions. Apologies if we offended anybody. Not the intent.
Not the intent.
And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. I will try to put a stream up on Sunday for the Firefly. I've written that down, so I'll get that out in the next few days, and show you those photo etch bending things and see if they do make life easier or not. We'll see. Okay, with that, thanks everybody. See you next time. Cheers now.
Cheers.